everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I'm back at it with yet another video, and this is on the up-and-coming lunar eclipse in Virgo. All right, this is a big one, so I hope you guys are ready. We're going to be diving into some of the effects of this particular eclipse in Virgo. We're going to talk all about what it means for you and your rising or your sun sign, so make sure you guys stay tuned to the end of the video to see that. This is going to be a total lunar eclipse that's taking place on March the 3rd, 2025, and this will be at 12 degrees of Virgo and 53 minutes. If you guys want to connect with me and you want to book a personal reading, or you want to check out my courses or some of my other content, click the links in the description below and head over to beyondtheveiltarot.com. You guys can see all of that there. All right, well, this is the third eclipse. So I'm calling this like the third knock, because we have had several eclipses in the Virgo Pisces axis that we've been working with since last year. And honestly, whatever comes up now shouldn't feel like much of a surprise. I feel like we've gotten pretty familiarized with some of this energy. And this is a solar eclipse that was actually seeded in September of 2025. So this is a lunar eclipse that is a completion to that point. So you're gonna have to kind of put on your thinking caps, think about what was kind of going on last September. Now, like I said, it's the third knock at the Virgo door. So I think this one's firm enough to say, do you hear me now? Now, if you guys think all the way back to what was going on in the spring and also in the fall of last year, we saw eclipses that were in Virgo. March 14th, 2025, we saw a lunar eclipse that took place around 23 degrees, brought some heavy endings, which is pretty common when we see lunar eclipses. These are completions of cycles. And then we also saw the solar eclipse that took place at 29 degrees of Virgo, actually right around the fall equinox last year. So that was a little bit of like a paradoxical moment, I think, because that's where we saw both closure, because the South Node is in Virgo, but also the inception of something new. And it was at that critical 29 degrees. It was in opposition to both Saturn and Neptune that were kind of dancing in and out of Aries and back into Pisces. And this represents that kind of critical closure moment. So pull out your chart, take a look at which house Virgo is in. This is where you're going to be seeing the effects of this eclipse. Now, this time with the third one, this is kind of like the sequence that's now getting ready to close, although next year we'll have some more eclipses taking place in Virgo. But this is actually going to be the only one that we're going to be experiencing in 2026. So this is really underlining what has already been kind of said twice before. And we all know third time's the charm. So take a look and see what you got going on with your chart. And I'm going to kind of break all of this down and talk to you guys about what's happening, all the aspects, the Sabian symbols, all that jazz. And obviously, if you guys are liking my content, please do subscribe to the channel. Click that bell button below so you can see more of it. I'm here on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays using tarot and astrology to make sense of what's going on in the cosmos. Drop me a comment also, leave me a rising sign. Let me know what's going on in your chart. Is it squaring or conjuncting something? And how are you guys feeling? Now, as you guys know, we're already in the midst of eclipse season. February brought us that big, beautiful solar eclipse in Aquarius. So this is the second act, because eclipses always come in pairs. Very different sign, different purpose, different meaning. But eclipses in general are the bringers of change. So I just want to tell you guys, you don't have to wait until March 3rd hits to feel the effects of this eclipse. We can already be seeing some of the themes that are already kind of happening and taking place as this video is dropping. But a lunar eclipse, well, a lunar eclipse specifically is really going to be a time where we see that the lunar eclipse is kind of where the Earth is passing between the sun and the moon. And eclipses eclipse things out. So in this case, with the lunar eclipse, it's going to be casting a shadow across the moon's surface. So unlike a solar eclipse, which is more kind of, I think, visible, at least depending on where you are. The last one we had was not visible in most parts of the world. But that's where we see with a lunar eclipse, it's going to be visible from anywhere on the Earth. And this is like above the horizon, right? So that's how we're kind of looking at it. Anyway, so they only happen when we have a full moon. That makes it a lunar eclipse. And eclipses are all about culmination. So we see that something kind of gets wrapped up, something's coming to completion, and obviously secrets are being revealed. So it can represent major emotional endings that are taking place, and it's making way for what will eventually be some new beginnings. Now, the other thing to kind of think about is that The moon represents the collective, so it represents our emotions, our inner world. It's also connected to how we feel. So as we see this lunar eclipse kind of getting illuminated, really what it's going to be showing us is what's been brewing beneath the surface, and it's kind of bringing it now to a head. This particular eclipse in Virgo, obviously it's in an earth sign. This is mutable earth. That is the 6th sign of the zodiac, traditionally ruled by Mercury. And Virgo is all about precision. This is a sign that's known for routine, service, health, and daily routines and rituals that kind of make up our lives. And when it's in this particular sign, it's really going to be highlighting the themes of being of service, being organized, healing, and anything that's kind of connected to all the little things that most people miss. So as we see the eclipse take place, it's really calling us to kind of look at all the details in our daily lives and what we've been working towards for the better part of the last 6 months. I think what it's really asking us is, what have we been neglecting? Where have we been maybe overgiving to the point of kind of like self-exhaustion? What habits are coming up that are no longer serving us? And what new ones are getting ready to be born? Now, this is, like I said, the 3rd one, so it represents like this kind of karmic kind of like completion or culmination that's taking place. And likely we will find, as we're getting into what will be the new moon in Pisces, later in March, this will be a time where we can kind of set new intentions and move forward. That one will not be an eclipse, but it'll be a Pisces eclipse 6 months later. So if you're looking to set new intentions, hold off, wait until we get to later in March for that Pisces new moon. But I think really what it's doing is it's underlining what has already been said twice before. So I feel like this is an eclipse that can give us a bit of a swift kick in the behind if we haven't been doing our Virgo due diligence. Now, it's going to be taking place on March the 3rd, 2026. I'm here in Texas, so it's going to be around 5:37 a.m. Central Time. So that'll be closer to 3:37 on the Pacific Coast, 6:37 in the morning on the Eastern Coast. But obviously adjust your time zones depending on where you guys live. And because it's involving the moon, naturally there's going to be a huge emphasis on anything connecting to our instincts, anything that deals with our subconscious and cycles of relief. Now, 12 degrees of Virgo, according to degree theory, it carries this energy of Pisces vibes, which I feel like is so appropriate because obviously a lunar eclipse in Virgo is when the sun is opposing the moon and the sun's moving through Pisces, as are a lot of other planets. So we see Mars there, we see the North Node, the sun, Mercury, and Venus all moving through Pisces. So naturally it's representing, kind of this balancing act between these two particular signs. And I really liken, Virgo and Pisces to kind of like no man's land. The 6th and the 12th house represents all the to-do lists, all the things connected to our jobs, our work, our routine, and our physical health, where Pisces talks more about the subconscious, the spirit, sleep, what's kind of going on behind the scenes. And obviously these houses are wanting to heal, or these signs are connected to kind of healing in different ways. So that Pisces degree coming through with the lunar eclipse being at 12, it's going to touch on the themes of intuition, right? It's about spirituality, compassion, dreams, escapism, confusion, dissolution, emotional security, and obviously addictions, as well as illusions and endings. So it's like a double dose of Pisces energy, and then we have the opposition. And because Virgo is obviously the primary focus here, because that's where the moon is, at least it's earthy, it's grounded, it's practical, it's analytical, and it's going to give us the opportunity to kind of cut through, I think, some of the fog during the eclipse. Now, it may take until later in March and even in April until the Mercury retrograde is kind of wrapping up to see the true effects of this particular eclipse. But I do think it's going to be touching on being more health-focused, detail-driven, and also showing us what we need to improve on personally and collectively, and what we need to kind of purify. So the eclipse in itself is really amplifying, I think, this tension between Virgo's need for order and precision and kind of practical problem solving, and Pisces' kind of tendency to pull more towards being kind of fluid and surrendering and, transcendence and anything that's connected to just releasing and dissolving and letting things go. So I anticipate it's going to do what it's done in previous eclipse cycles. We've seen that it definitely highlights the themes of emotional release in areas where we maybe have been too critical, right? Or we've been too much of a perfectionist. It's pushing us to kind of dissolve some of this stuff and let go of the rigid structures that sometimes Virgo has, and doing that through compassion and using our intuition or spiritual insight. That's Pisces. Now, on a personal level, it could manifest as letting go of self-doubt. It can also be about releasing any health anxieties, maybe overwork, obviously changes with our jobs, right? Because this is a South Node eclipse. And I think it's going to be really about embracing forgiveness and focusing on healing and some kind of creative flow. Now, globally or collectively, it may actually foretell that we're about to see some major shifts in healthcare systems, service industries, or environmental issues. And this is obviously going to be kind of blurred by misinformation or idealistic kind of visions, because we're going to see Mercury, the ruler of this eclipse, retrograde in Pisces, the opposite sign. So you want to watch for confusion or escapism, especially around facts or details. They're going to be very hard to kind of decipher. I also think that we're going to see a great bit of deal around, empathic breakthroughs, having better boundaries when it comes to our sleep and our daily habits. And if this eclipse is aspecting your chart, so if you happen to have anything around that 11, 12, 13 degrees of Virgo, it's going to be very personal for you. So those degrees in the sun, moon, or rising, I would say pay attention, but also the 11 to 13 degrees of the mutable signs. So if you are a Gemini or a Sag or a Pisces, you're going to be feeling the effects through an opposition or a square. And I'll take you guys through that at the end of the video so you can see where it's kind of taking place. If it is aspecting some of these particular angles or planets in your chart, it could very likely trigger some kind of karmic release. And it's going to blend that energy of Virgo's kind of service to others with Pisces' need to kind of dissolve boundaries. And you're going to see that it is going to test you a little bit emotionally. So this is where it kind of pays to know your personal your natal placements. Now, the Sabian symbol for Virgo 13 degrees, is a powerful statesman overcomes a state of political hysteria. All right, so we're going to read that. We're going to see what the Sabian symbol says. I'm rounding up because that's what we do with the Sabians to 13. And it's a powerful statesman overcomes a state of political hysteria. The theme is taking the reins. The symbol speaks to the power of leadership, and it's demonstrated by those rare individuals who command the respect of their fellows by bringing about the stability and order when chaos and confusion are winning the upper hand. The image of a strong hand supplementing political hysteria symbolizes direct intervention at the point of crisis, or where things have been reaching a boiling point after a long period of administrative incompetency. It suggests here that the weak or ineffective leadership eventually results in confusion, fear, and anarchy. At its highest, it represents exceptional administrative skills and keen judgment for outstanding leadership. Watch for indecisiveness, weakness, and lack of personal responsibility by refusing to make decisions or take a stand on anything. The accent is on leadership and decisiveness. You may have to take the bull by the horns and to rescue the situation that is getting out of hand. The greatest advantage lies in doing something about it. It's time to get involved, see your objective, act with confidence, and be firm. Guard against hitting a panic button or failing in the face of a crisis. Don't appear weak. You may lose confidence with those who depend on you. So stepping stones is leadership, mastery, authority, command, control, administration, superiority, supremacy, domination, management, order, regulation, strength, force, power, repression, and restriction. Oh boy. I think when we think about this particular Sabian symbol, it's highlighting the power of either an individual or like an institutional authority, and it's cutting through the illusions. That's basically the name of the game. And this is about grounding the energies to kind of guide ourselves and others towards some kind of resolution. So in astrological terms, it's really aligning with Virgo's more analytical kind of problem-solving nature. And it's about kind of moving away, right, from some of the hysteria or the emotional excess, which we see with all of those planets in polarity to the eclipse in Pisces. It's also about practical discernment and taking action. So we know that when an eclipse comes through, especially a lunar eclipse, everybody's a little bit more emotional. And there's a lot of emotional fallout because the moon is coming into conjunction with the South Node just prior to the eclipse taking place. And I look at this and I go, all right, well, it's going to emphasize emotional climax, and it's about releasing something. So it means that it could bring about an event that could bring a moment of clarity or intervention in chaotic situations. Maybe for you personally, it could mean that you're overcoming anxiety or overthinking or relational drama through taking a breath and making grounded decisions. I think that collectively, this is going to be about stabilizing kind of like health crises. This can also be about workplace upheaval and societal division. So we'll see things like debates over facts versus feelings in politics or the media. And it does foretell that, the strong hands, so that could be leaders, that could be healers, or kind of innovators, are coming in to kind of quell the hysteria, leading to, I think, purification or reform. But if we don't heed the advice that it warns, then, it could escalate into confusion before we actually see resolution. In your life, I think it really represents taking a second to really reflect on where you've been caught up in all the hysteria, right? And maybe this is just critical kind of loops, or, kind of draining yourself with feeling like you have to be perfect. And applying the Sabian symbol is like a call to step into feeling more like an authority figure. And it's about self-leadership, and it's also going to be really important for emotional closure. Now, I want to show you guys something, because this eclipse is so wild how it was tied to what we had last year. So this is where we had the eclipse that was in Virgo around September 21st, where this was seated. And if you look at this, it was at that critical 29 degrees. So there was something that was getting washed out around leadership, kind of connected to services. Maybe it was like medical or health related. Certainly major changes in the job market. I've seen a lot of people go through job changes or difficulty with finding like stable employment since last fall. And I really attribute a lot of that to the critical degree. I think also we saw Mercury at the time of the solar eclipse in September in slight opposition to Neptune. So it was kind of saying like, not being able to relate to other people, or not being able to get along with other people, or searching for a relationship, or searching for support or allies, because Mercury was in Libra. So not the easiest placement, although I do remember the grand air trine where Mercury was at least trining Pluto. So it was about finding communities and connection, and also that connection to Uranus was about kind of getting outside of the box. And I think we've seen a lot of people segue, and they've been like learning new skills and developing, necessary networks to focus on making some changes either with their health and habits, or potentially even with their jobs. So looking at this solar eclipse, I can only assume that there was probably going to be a lot of drama in these departments over the next 6 months, leading us to March of 2026. And now we're going to see some similar aspects that should be highlighting some of these oppositions. Well, we do. So let's go to where we're at now in March. And you guys know me, I always tell you that the aspects are going to dictate and determine whether or not this is going to be a good or bad lunation. And I do this with all of my new and full moons, not just the eclipses. And I like to kind of break it down. And so the first place that my eye is going to go to is not even necessarily what's happening with the sun and the moon. I mean, the opposition is a given, that makes the eclipse. But I'm always going to focus on the ruler of this particular lunation. So that would be Mercury. And we've got Mercury that's in Pisces. By the time that the eclipse is rolling through, the Mercury retrograde in Pisces will have already begun at the end of February. And so that's the first place that we want to look at. We've been kind of getting familiar with Mercury and its pre-retrograde shadow. So we're definitely seeing it kind of kick up a little bit of dust. Now with Mercury being in Pisces, it's in its opposite sign, right? So it's not playing with home field advantage. It is now having to kind of go through the more emotional, kind of sentimental, reflective, intuitive waters of Pisces. So it's a little bit challenged here. And then on top of that, it's retrograde. So this means that probably until Mercury passes these degrees, which won't be until closer to the end of March going into April, that we're going to make sense of some of the things that come up during this eclipse. So don't expect immediate results. This is something that is still going to kind of play out over time. I do think that because it's really putting an emphasis on, Pisces land where all these other planets are, it's definitely heavily coloring this Virgo eclipse, and it's kind of stealing the show in a way, and it's bringing the energy back to something. So something that you're working through, something that you're trying to problem solve, healing emotions, working on our sleep, working on our spiritual habits. And it really, really beautifully highlights the fact that we have to integrate the mind, the body, and the spirit in order to fully heal. And I've told you guys a lot of this during the eclipses over the last year, that Virgo can show where you go to the gym, you eat well, you take the vitamins, you do all the things you're supposed to do. But, you know, on the outside, you can look healthy, but on the inside, are you actually balanced? Are you feeling emotionally kind of stable? Are you getting good sleep? Are you feeling good on an emotional or psychological level? So we can see people who look fine on the outside, they're not feeling well on the inside. We can also see people who are maybe, you know, not knowing exactly how to get a hold of all this Pisces energy, and they're recognizing and they're realizing that there's been bad habits, but, you know, not great sleep habits, self-sabotaging, drinking, drugging, and fear or hysteria, because that can be Pisces, that's actually leading us to feel a little emotionally unregulated, or that we can't actually kind of stick to a routine. So it can kind of mirror each other through the opposition. With Mercury moving through Pisces, it's in detriment and it's retrograde. So we've got two kind of negatives working against us. It's highlighting what we saw with the solar eclipse last year in opposition to Saturn and Neptune, where there was distortion, there was confusion, we didn't know what was right or wrong, or what was actually healthy or not healthy. Over the last 6 months, we have seen the food pyramid completely be inverted. We're seeing a complete gutting of a lot of like medical systems here in the United States, changes to how we're teaching about health, changes with pharmacy, you know, and pharmaceutical drugs. All of that stuff is very much kind of the Virgo Pisces axis. So I think this is part of it, that we're actually getting ready to see what's actually really going to change and how that's going to be impacting, you know, all of us independently as these planets finally leave Pisces in the next couple of weeks and come into Aries. And so it's going to be about, I think, people being better equipped to kind of get in touch with their body, know what works, what doesn't work, and start taking responsibility for their health and their habits. And we'll see that as planets are coming into conjunction with Saturn and Neptune in Aries in about mid-April. Now, as Mercury, you know, moving through Pisces in detriment, really what this means is that it's going to be foggy. We're not going to have a lot of clarity. It is going to be intuitive, but we're very prone to emotionally reacting to things like miscommunications or misunderstandings. You may catch yourself kind of daydreaming or revisiting past delusions, and I think that the effects, like I said, will be delayed. So expect some emotional confusion in thinking or communication, and then also this is a good time to be reevaluating spiritual and creative ideas because Mercury is in Pisces. So we might feel like we need a little bit more time before we can kind of wrap projects up, get them out, you know, complete things. We may also be feeling that with the eclipse coming in, it's really heightening this need to kind of release outdated routines in health habits with potential for misunderstanding. So there's gonna be a lot of people going, wow, I thought this was healthy. I'm realizing it's not. I caught myself doing that the last like 2 weeks. I was like, there were certain things certain products that I was buying, that I was eating, that I was like, well, it doesn't have seed oils, or it doesn't have this, it doesn't have that, assuming that it's healthy. And an app that I have loved using, and you guys should check it out, it's called Yucca. It's a free app. You can scan products. It's going to give you the full rundown of like what's actually inside of it. And it shows you all the additives and like what oils are in it and like how processed it is. It gives it a rating. But I was just scanning the things that I've just been buying for the last couple of months, thinking it was healthy. And I was like, oh my God, there may not be seed oils in it, but there's a bunch of additives and other things that are actually not good for me. So I was like, wow, okay, this is making me realize that I need to kind of have this on hand, I think, more frequently when I'm doing my shopping. So definitely check that out. I think it'd be helpful for a lot of people. It even surprised me, and I've gotten pretty good at reading like the ingredients and stuff on bags. But I think marketing can be so misleading because you see certain things that you're like, yes, that's what I want to eat. You know, it's organic or it doesn't have gluten or whatever. And then you start to see all the preservatives and the things that are in it, and you realize it's actually not that healthy. Anyway, so I bring that up because I feel like it's very much like the Mercury retrograde, that, you know, something that we believed or we felt was a certain way, it isn't. And so that's kind of the Mercury retrograde effect here. I think that it's really also going to be encouraging a lot of intuitive reflection over rigid analysis. So even though Virgo is all about structure and analysis and organization, this is not going to be the time to do that stuff. I think there's going to be this softening effect of Virgo's criticism, which is good. And it can translate into more kind of compassionate understandings with other people, but there's going to be a bit of a drag. There's going to be a delay until we get out of this retrograde in April. Now, obviously, Mercury is also opposite by sign the eclipse. It's about an 8-degree opposition because Mercury's at a 20. But it's worth noting that, with Mercury's opposition to the moon is emotional. Mercury is going to be more kind of like cerebral. So there isn't mutual reception here, but they're kind of saying the same thing. It's almost like Mercury going, well, this is how I feel. I need to reassess how I feel. And then, the moon in Virgo is like, well, it's not healthy. So maybe what you're feeling is right. What you're intuiting and kind of picking up is good. Let's get rid of that, that bad habit, that schedule that's not working for you, what have you. And the manifestation of illness and sickness can be very much Virgo 6th house through something that needs to be cleansed and kind of purified or released through Pisces. So what you're going to see with that opposition is that it creates almost like this mental emotional tension. That's what oppositions do. It's kind of getting pulled in two different directions. And it's between logical details and empathic flow. So the positive here is that in the midst of this, Mercury is very close to Venus. And so Venus is obviously exalted in Pisces. She's known for being very beautiful and lovely and forgiving and artistic and creative and inspired in this sign. So knowing that it's very close to Venus, which is going to enhance our thoughts about love, values, money, aesthetics, is a good thing, but it is opposing the moon, which means it's kind of opposing a practical kind of reality. So it will lead to major revelations, I think, in relationships, as well as our self-worth, potentially even our jobs, as well as finances. But this will soften the eclipse more kind of critical edge. So it's going to promote things like healing dialogues or potentially even artistic releases. Pisces can be about movies, editing, photography, vision boards, dream journals, all of that stuff. So it will, I think, give us the opportunity to let go of this kind of perfectionism in Virgo, and also potentially in partnerships or when it comes to our jobs. Just watch for idealization, and it can kind of turn into disillusionment as we're seeing Mercury retrograde so close to Venus. We're going to realize the things that we thought were solid or reliable or valuable, or the people that we thought that we kind of had on our side, may not potentially be who we thought they were. Now let's get to the positive stuff, because there is some positive stuff here. Both the Sun and Mercury are forming a trine to Jupiter in Cancer. Okay, so this is a water trine. By about, 3 degrees from the Sun to Jupiter, by about 5 degrees from Mercury to Jupiter. So we'll see the Mercury-Jupiter trine several times. I've talked about it on the channel over the last week or so. And basically what this means is that the Sun is about vitality. It can also be about leaders. It can be about people in positions of international kind of power. It can be about film stars or movie stars. It can be about people in the film industry. And that trine to obviously Jupiter makes everything bigger, right? So we've got Sun and Mercury in Pisces, like the consciousness and the awareness and all the subconscious things that are kind of going on, the spiritual stuff, what we dream about, is being enhanced by Jupiter. Well, Mercury and Jupiter are both retrograde, so it's more internal. But I see this as a situation where, it's going to really expand on some of those Jupiter in Cancer kind of topics. So emotional security, nurturing. And trines are supportive, so it does mean that this aspect is really expanding intuition, faith, and family and home matters. It might also maybe delay things going on with moves or changes going on with international travel or like legal dealings, like visas and immigration stuff. We can see that. I do think that it's optimistic insights that are going to be coming in during the eclipse, and it's going to be about emotional growth, with Jupiter retrograde kind of prompting that inner review of our beliefs and also what makes us feel safe. So what I expect to see is that the eclipse is actually going to ease some of the intensity by offering more emotional abundance and spiritual guidance. So we need sleep, we need meditation, we need rest, we need reflection. And you won't be hearing me saying this stuff so much pretty soon. Just so you guys know, it's just been really emphasized through some of the retrograde and also the eclipses that have been taking place. But once we get out of Pisces season, we're getting kind of into, April on. The only thing that's going to be chilling in Pisces is going to be the North Node. Everything else is moving through pretty much Aries and Taurus and going into kind of Gemini. So things are going to pick up speed very quickly. It almost seems like there's been a delay, and there's also been a great deception going on, trying to kind of keep from some of these things to unravel, because Mercury, when it goes retrograde, it goes and it finds all like the missing pieces and the information and the documents, and it tries to get it out, but it's in an area that's very private. So I'm speculating that a lot of the job numbers, a lot of the economy numbers, a lot of the stuff dealing with inflation, maybe manipulated stuff going on, even with the banks, is being delayed. We're not quite seeing it yet because these planets have not come out of Pisces yet. Now, I think that I would just watch for, the possibility of this eclipse to kind of ease some of Virgo's anxiety and worries, and it's dipping into this Cancerian kind of comfort zone. So it does foretell that there's going to be positive shifts in home and personal faith, even though we can feel like some things are kind of falling apart during the eclipse. Mars is also going to be in Pisces, and you guys are going to hear me talk about that later this week, probably on my Sunday video. But this is a planet of action and drive, and when Mars goes into Pisces, it's like kind of like trying to drive underwater. Like we kind of have to be a little bit more fluid. We don't have direct motion. We can't move as quickly. And our action and our passion is going to be influenced more by our emotions and our feelings because it's in a water sign. And it's at 0 degrees, okay? So it's saying that something is actually kind of getting heated up in the Pisces area of the chart. Not making any aspects too wide to be in opposition to Mars, so I'm not even going to consider that. But it is suggesting something is being seeded and there is some sense of urgency or completion in our assertive kind of pursuits. But we have to do these things with compassion or we're going to kind of fall victim to kind of escapism tendencies. Pisces is also about hospitals. It's connected to mental health institutions. It's connected to foreign lands. It's connected to potentially the beginning of conflict and foreign wars. It could also be relating to trade wars or issues going on with controlling water, like waterways, like where we're seeing imports and exports that are going, internationally. So we could see a lot of military kind of movement, Navy deployment, and the potential for there to be some stuff that's kind of rumbling in the world that has yet to kind of hit where you are personally. You'll see more of that stuff in April. Now, I think the problem here is that energy may feel like it's just kind of sluggish or it's just kind of waxing and waning because this is a mutable sign. Sure, we can feel more idealistic, maybe spiritually motivated, but 0 degrees is a pivotal point. It means something is starting. And Mars is influencing Saturn and Neptune, which we just got out of that Saturn-Neptune conjunction. It can mean collectively more people are calling for peace or more people are calling for compassion or they're calling for meditation. So we might see like a lot of spiritual kind of action and movement going on there. And it's really pushing us to take action on dreams or things that we have to sacrifice, things that we have to kind of give up. So it's going to add a little bit of subtle motivation during the eclipse. We're not going to see what it's going to be quite yet. And it's urging the release of, I think, passive-aggressive behavior because Mars in Pisces can do that. It can get a little moody. We can also see that it struggles sometimes to find the will or the motivation to get things done. So it can manifest, I think, in a positive way because the 12th house can be connected to advocacy work, especially when it comes to private, spaces, healthcare, mental health, anything that's connected to service areas. But it does kind of risk burnout if it's not properly grounded. Now we're going to see Venus is making a sextile to Uranus and Taurus. That's an easy aspect. It's nice, but remember Pisces is still about wrapping things up. And so as we see that sextile to Uranus and Taurus, Venus, which is connected to love and values, and it's exalted here in Pisces, is sextiling innovative Uranus and Taurus, where it's kind of shaking up things that deal with resources, banks, and stability. It's harmonious though, so it can basically say there can be good surprises in relationships, finances, or pleasure, or unexpected beauty or financial opportunities. Freedom and connection is big with Uranus in sextile to Venus. I think it's also going to be about creative breakthroughs when it comes to material or security matters. So the impact that you'll probably see from this is that it's really also lightening the eclipse up, making it exciting and liberating in a way, and maybe it's facilitating some of the, release of rigid kind of Virgo structures. Outdated values would be one, especially with Uranus and Taurus. And we're doing that through innovative earthly changes. So it's great for relational or financial kind of reinvention if you want to do that around the time of the eclipse. Now, yes, Saturn and Neptune are still conjunct, guys. So we're still feeling the effects of it. It's going to be felt for some time, particularly between now and May, and it'll still kind of reverberate off into the future. But that's also picking up that energy of Mars's connection to Saturn and Neptune. So Neptune, dreams and illusion, Saturn, structure and reality. So in bold Aries, it's really blending idealism with discipline. And so I think that for those of you guys who are like, that's it, I'm quitting this bad habit, I'm getting back on the eating well, working out, being productive, having a to-do list, or being more, assertive or even more balanced kind of vibe, this is a good time to be doing those things. Even though it feels like a little choppy with the retrograde, I think it's a good time to phase out old habits, or if you've been wanting to cut a job or change jobs, move maybe your office or make some changes in your office, that's definitely a good thing that you can do during this time, because what it wants to do is build dreams into tangible forms. So there's potential, obviously, for confusion, and we're seeing that because of the retrograde and the oppositions. But that's because Saturn is still needing to break away from Neptune. So there can be some delays still, some harsh realizations where fantasies meet their limits. So what this conjunction is still teaching us this month is that we have to kind of ground the eclipse's emotional release with practical lessons. So I think it's going to highlight dissolving old boundaries through Neptune, while it's enforcing new responsibilities and karma through Saturn. Now, it's also probably going to be affecting anything that deals with Aries. So identity, initiatives, starting things, who am I, that kind of stuff is getting worked out. And it foretells long-term shifts that we're going to see all year long about how we pioneer, I think, spiritual or creative goals. Pluto will also be making a sextile to Saturn and Neptune, and we're going to start to see the Saturn-Pluto sextile perfect here over the next couple of weeks. But this is at least a harmonizing energy of some heavy-hitting planets. And what this means is that we're taking Pluto's kind of power or transformation in innovative Aquarius, systems, the internet, technology, community, and it's making a friendly aspect to Saturn and Neptune. So this basically means that you're going to see, supportive, deep change, I think, in collective kind of humanitarian areas, and this is really about empowering structured dreams or reforms. Likely, this will probably bring up some opportunities to kind of amplify the eclipse's transformational kind of, potential and ease some of that Virgo kind of Pisces stuff, polarities, where it's like, oh, it's service or surrender. It's actually going to teach us that through society, networks, connection, even tech-driven evolution, we can actually see change. We can see positive change, and it can signal positive shifts in groups and communities, and also in turn help influence personal health and work transformations positively. So if you're somebody who's like, oh, I lost my job, right? And I'm hearing a lot of people saying this under the Virgo eclipses, or I can't find a job. It's saying network, join communities, be a part of groups, collaborate with other people, become more independent, so that way you can start to kind of see your vision come to life. The other side of my brain says, yeah, but the reality is post, the eclipse that we saw in Aquarius, this is where lots of jobs are now becoming less and less necessary or needed, particularly data analysis, anything that is input, service industry jobs too, as a result of changes that have happened with technology. So it is highlighting the fact that it may potentially be showing a lot of people that their jobs, their careers are now starting to face this harsh new reality that's like, okay, technology is adapting, things are evolving, and now we have to figure out how do we deal with this if there is potentially going to be this much change in the next coming year or so, and you guys will see that. Finally, we're going to see the Jupiter stationing. So this is also Jupiter getting ready to wake up. A few short days after this particular eclipse. Let's see, when is it exactly that it's going to go direct? We'll see Jupiter go direct. So when it's stationing, that means that Jupiter is very powerful. Okay, so that'll be about a week later. Okay, so that'll be on the 10th that the Jupiter direct is going to be happening. So it's going to sit at that degree. It's going to sit at 15 degrees. So if you have anything around 14, 15, 16 degrees of Cancer, you're feeling that throughout this next week, but it might actually really get highlighted during the eclipse, because the eclipse is also sextiling Jupiter, and we see that the sun is coming into a trine with Jupiter, which is going to be kind of perfecting. The moon in Virgo will sextile just after the eclipse. The sun's going to come in just a couple days later. Well, Jupiter expands, right? So right now it's retrograde. It's internal. So it's about expansion, luck, travel, philosophy, law, and it's stationing retrograde. It's been stationing retrograde, but it's going to go direct soon after the eclipse. So there's almost this pause that's going on during the eclipse for inner growth in emotional kind of inner worlds. Security realms is I think a huge thing with Jupiter in Cancer. And then there's this forward momentum that's going to be kind of pushing about a week or two after the eclipse. This is really about kind of reflecting on our family, our roots, or nurturing before the abundance flows, before we start to see some major changes that's happening out in the world. So it's really building, I think, this anticipation around what's going to be the eclipse. And then the station intensifies the themes of emotional expansion. So people will be more emotional reactionary. The positive is that I think it's going to help integrate this release into what can be protective. So if Cancer is the home and Virgo is going to be the health, habits, it can even be about pets, it can even be about organization. What a wonderful time to like start your spring cleaning, right? To like go and like purge your home and clean your kitchen and like get the grout and all the stuff out of like all the cubbies and the drawers and all the things that are in hidden places. You'd be surprised how much of emotional clearing you have. That is the magic of Virgo. Even though it's service and it's kind of sometimes having to, get their hands dirty, there is something very therapeutic about cleaning and purifying, because that's what Virgo is kind of known for. So watch for that. That's going to be happening probably around the week after the eclipse. But overall, when I kind of put all this stuff together, I think the big takeaway for me is that all of these aspects are quite big, and the oppositions are what stick out for me the most. Sure, the Jupiter trines are great, but Mercury and Jupiter retrograde, so we're not going to see the effects for a little bit. It definitely creates a very dynamic mix of confusion and release. And this is also about then after the confusion, that practical rebuilding. And that's why the Sabian symbol makes so much sense to me. It's like, okay, there's hysteria. How do we get calm in that moment and kind of take charge and like do what needs to be done? And I think what we'll find is that it's going to really accelerate ending certain routines in health or service-oriented areas. But the harmonious aspects like the sextiles and the trines are going to suggest there's opportunities for compassionate and kind of innovative healing rather than just pure chaos and disruption. The retrogrades just simply add introspection. So it's delaying some of the full manifestations that you're going to see with this eclipse, likely until closer to April. Now, I think that globally, we will see some major shifts in healthcare. We're going to see shifts in regards to environmental matters, things that deal with humanitarian efforts, things that are connected to our workspaces, things that are connected to health and services, particularly in hospitals. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on like what's changing with like nursing programs, what's changing with pharmacy kind of ads, what's going to be shifting in regards to programs that are kind of dedicated to actually making people healthy rather than just trying to kind of treat the symptoms. I think that also what we'll probably see is that this is like a call to balance logic with intuition, and it's really going to be about releasing control so we have more spiritual flow. Now, lunar eclipses, right? So eclipses in general, they mean different things, but lunar eclipses usually foretell in the second decan of Virgo, because it's at 12 degrees, some pretty significant things. So I was looking at a whole like list of stuff. Traditionally, when we see like a total lunar eclipse, it will cast like a reddish hue or like a blood moon glow. And these have a tendency to be a little bit more supercharged. And obviously we know that there's a lot of emotional releases. Lunar eclipses focus on endings and also shadow work. So there can be a lot of subconscious things that can kind of surface, like hidden feelings, patterns, or relationships that kind of come to light. And it will trigger fated karmic closures. Now, the effects of this can last about 6 to 18 months, but personally, I think we're going to see some stuff over the immediate next month and probably for about 6. And you'll see it peak the next couple of weeks, and you have to see how it's aspecting your natal chart. But for sure, it's going to usher in some major evolution, and it's about emotional upheavals, right? Relationship shifts, job changes, health insights. And this is positive because it needs to purge and purify so it can clear the blockages so that way we can have renewal. However, these eclipses are notorious for kind of exposing illusions or forcing out what can feel like some very uncomfortable truths. In the second decan of Virgo, this is strongly kind of tied to Capricorn and Saturn. It has that influence. And this is a sign that's really ambitious in its nature. It's structured. So if you're a second decan of Virgo, you have like kind of like that Capricorn flair. It means that this is all about discipline. It's about practicality and also endurance. And it's really adding to some of like the more like meticulous kind of tendencies that Virgo has, where they have this crazy work ethic. It's all about long-term planning. It's about responsibility of health and routines. Now, for the effects of that connected to this particular decan, What I have noted here is that it's really going to release life, work, or wellness themes. So stuff that's not working. Unsustainable habits, I think, is a big one, whether that's a personal habit, a health habit, a job, self-criticism. So that way you can find better and more sustainable paths. It may also highlight where you're too overly responsible or rigid. And so it wants you to kind of release some of like that Saturnian energy of like the burdens. And it also means that you have to be mature in the process of doing that. So I'm expecting we're going to see some major revelations about efficiency and service to others, physical and mental health. And some of us are going to experience a career pivot, and maybe it's about boundary setting in relationships or healing chronic issues. Collectively, we see that these eclipses bring reforms in labor as well as agriculture or public health with a practical and kind of like enduring twist. So check out what's going on in your chart so you can see what's kind of happening there. These particular eclipses, I got a new book that I started reading. It's called The Astrological Decans, Tarot and the Stock Market. It's by Olga Morales. She's great. I really love her work. But I was reading about what she was saying about the eclipse cycles. And so she talks about how this is primarily connected to the stock market, but each decan has a different like rulership and a connection. And so under her system, the second decan is connected to Venus, okay? And it says that when there are lunar eclipses that are in this particular degree, it brings harm to advisors and scholars. So that's something else to kind of think about. I'm still working with that system, but let's see how it hits. I went with something that I know is tried and true, and I went and looked at the Saros cycles that this is connected to. And so this particular eclipse is connected to Saros cycle number 133. And basically Saros cycles, like eclipses will repeat throughout time, right? So this one belongs to 133, which dates back to year 1557 all the way to 2819. And this repeats roughly every 18 years and like 11 days. So we will see similarities that will come through these eclipses throughout time because they have similar geometry, they have similar degrees that got kind of triggered. So they'll have an echo of what's happened in the past, especially around Virgo themes, right? Delayed consequences, reckonings with ignoring the issues, and obviously anything that connects to sudden shocks through the eclipse. So I was like, all right, what happened with the last time that we saw some of these eclipses in this particular cycle? What were the themes? And it all seems like everything was consolidating around mass awareness, labor and public health shifts, and exposure of inequalities. I'll give you guys some examples. In December of 1917, we saw a similar eclipse. This is when we saw the end of World War I and the Russian Revolution aftermath. We also saw that there was a rise of labor movements, lots of health reforms, and attention to overlooked social conditions. In June of 1972, this was Bloody Sunday in Northern Ireland. This is when British forces killed 14 civil rights protesters, and it sparked global scrutiny of oppression and human rights and resulted in major policy changes as a result of that. February of 1990 was when Nelson Mandela was actually released 2 days later on February 11th, kind of symbolizing, like this dismantling of what was going on with the oppression that he was facing. And then we also saw accelerated German reunification talks post-Berlin Wall. So that was after the Berlin Wall fell. 2 months later, they started talking about being able to kind of merge the Great Divide of both sides of Germany. Interesting. Then in February of 2008, we saw that there was the Kosovo Independence Declaration, early signs of the global financial crisis, which then really materialized in late 2008 and 2009. We also saw that this was a result of the subprime mortgages, the bad mortgages that escalated, leading to the Great Recession. So am I saying these same things are going to happen? No, but I think it's interesting that this is supposed to be about reunification, bringing people together. It's supposed to be about dealing with possibly issues regarding, oppression and human rights. I think that we're going to see opportunities if we can pay attention, and I keep calling this Mercury retrograde the canary in the coal mine, for some of the news that's going to be coming about the global markets. Pisces is about international trade, okay? So all these trade negotiations, the tariff talks, they're doing this, we're doing that, changes with their plans for, international relationships and trade. That is the Mercury retrograde in Pisces conjunct Venus. And my interpretation with the trine of Jupiter is that every country is going to start looking out for themselves. And it's going to be about what they can provide, what they can build, what they can trade, what they can start creating at home to try to kind of overcome what's going to be some of these more economical wars. That's really what's happening. So that way they're not getting hit. Now, can there be renegotiations? For sure. And we're going to see stuff kind of go back and forth during the retrograde. But I think that overall, we will see some similarities, patterns that are connected to delayed justice. Pisces is about people going to prison. That's what it's about. Structural exposure amid accountability. And oftentimes we see with this particular cycle, social justice, economic vulnerabilities, and authority changes. So as we start to see this eclipse unfold in 2026, I think that it'll manifest in the form of like a reckoning in the healthcare system, work and service sectors, and also, where there is service inequalities, really urging us for grounded release and reforms amid some of the oppositions that we're kind of seeing in Pisces, and that seems very confusing. All right, so in layman's terms, what is the energy that's really getting highlighted for me when I look at this for us, like how this is going to be impacting us over the next couple of weeks? This is all about release and not resistance. I think that's like the key here, that this eclipse is really asking us not asking us to do more. And I think that's the common misunderstanding of Virgo. It's about how can I be more efficient, not how can I work more. So it's not asking us to do more. It's asking us to release what no longer fits. Old habits, outdated definitions of success, relationships that have run their course, creative identities maybe that we have outgrown. It's also asking for daily recalibration. And I think a lot of that is because of the sheer amount of oppositions that we're seeing to Pisces, the Mercury retrograde, which is like, well, working, and kind of burning the candle at both ends isn't really working for me. And it's going to show you that with that connection to Virgo in the 6th house of service and routines, this eclipse is shining a light on where you've been running on fumes or running on empty. Giving too much, or maybe, confusing by being busy with being productive. And I think that's something else that I've learned with some of the eclipses in these signs. This also means that some of us are going to feel like our self-worth is under a microscope. And I think thankfully with the Venus-Uranus sextile, we can overcome that. But Virgo's kind of detail-oriented energy might have you confronting questions of, am I enough, right? Am I doing enough? Am I worthy of rest? And it can kind of be harsh with the self and deny the self that. So the answer, by the way, is always yes. If Mercury is in Pisces, yes, you're doing enough. It's okay to rest. You don't have to be working 24/7. You should get more sleep. You should have some peace. And also like take time to feel creative, inspired, or practice gratitude. I think a lot of the trines to Jupiter can really be talking about that. And something else that this got me thinking about is just Virgo is so much about the body. Pisces is about the soul. So the body is going to keep score here, and the body is going to remember things. So aches, pains, tummy aches, not feeling well, illness that manifests because it's like the universe's way of saying, hey, stay in bed, rest, recuperate, process this, deal with the emotions, and then you're free to go. Because Virgo has that connection with the physical body, as does Aries, where Saturn and Neptune is, the eclipse may bring up a lot of physical symptoms for some people. So watch for fatigue, tension, and illness. Accidents can also happen under an eclipse connected to like a 6th house energy. And really this is like the body demanding attention that we've been denying it. I always tell people there's only very few things that kind of ground us, and it's like weight, pain, right? And sometimes illness. So if you're not grounded, if you're not doing what the Sabian symbol says to do, and you're kind of out there where all the hysteria is going on, it's going to literally put you in bed, right? Hopefully not. I'm going to touch wood as I say that. But as somebody who's been going through the eclipses in the 6th and in the 12th house, I've learned very quickly that that's what it does. It doesn't really matter what your plans are, your work schedule, or what your travel plans are. If you're not dealing with some of these things, they're going to find a way to kind of manifest. So it's so important during this eclipse to practice emotional housekeeping. And that's very much a moon in Virgo thing. If you've got your moon in the 6th house, or if you have your moon in Virgo, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now it's time to really look at, I think, the private architecture of our lives. And this might mean it's our home, our memory, our emotional safety, and really asking us what foundational structures have shifted, and are we still pretending like they have not changed? If so, then this eclipse is kind of the gateway to recognize that and get the opportunity to hit reset. All right, well, let's talk about how these particular eclipses are going to be impacting and affecting the 12 rising signs. I'm a Western astrologer. That's the kind of astrology that I practice. I do recommend listening to your rising sign first to see exactly which house this eclipse is going to be taking place in. Go back, think about what happened last fall, what intentions you set, where were you feeling a little too stretched? Go back and think about what happened last spring in 2025, where there was a similar lunar eclipse in Virgo and a Mercury retrograde in Pisces. Actually, Mercury and Venus were retrograde in Pisces around that time. So it's a little deja vu. You're going to get the most by listening to your rising sign first to see where it's going to hit. Also listen to your sun sign to see how it's impacting you, your career, your joy, your vitality, and your moon sign. This is a lunar transit, so I would listen to my moon sign as well to see how that's impacting you emotionally. I will be showing it to you guys from the perspective of the whole sign system, but if you're a Placidus user like me, then I do recommend looking at your chart. See where you have 12 degrees of Virgo, okay? So you may have to listen to more than one rising sign, and that's going to show you exactly where this eclipse is taking place. So let me take it back a little bit. And I just want to remind you guys, it is on the 3rd, so you're going to see this on the 2nd, but that's just because I'm playing with the dial here, so forgive me. All right, so we're going to start with my Aries and my Aries risings. You guys will be experiencing the lunar eclipse in Virgo. It will be taking place in your natal 6th house. Now, for you guys, it's basically a lot of the things that I said, you're like, yes, that resonates with me. That's because the eclipse is going to be moving through the 6th house for you. And more or less, the 6th house is about your daily health, your routines, your pets, your habits. It can also be connected to your office space or coworkers. Now, you may feel this very much in your body. And I say that because Mars is your chart ruler, and during the time of the eclipse, it's going into your 12th house. So it could quite literally be that you're having a mental health day, a sick day. It can also mean that there are maybe some changes that are kind of happening with your health or with your habits. And I think that if you are feeling this in your body, it's a signal that you have been ignoring or something that you have been overriding. Maybe a time where you're finding that you're kind of like in a rhythm that no longer fits your pace that you have been keeping. Something in your daily life might be asking you to kind of release it. So whether it's a job, a bad habit, if it's something that you want to like let go of, I recommend doing that. This is all going to be about work and responsibility coming under the lens of the eclipse to kind of show you where you've been doing too much alone. And where service has kind of turned you into this period of like letting yourself go in some way. Now, I do think you're not meant to burn yourself down to prove devotion. And I think that's part of what's kind of coming up, and really recognizing that your presence is already enough. This is a moment for you guys, I think, of recalibration. And it's going to be about choosing habits that feed your strength instead of feeling like it's being siphoned, whether that's at work or whether you're helping other people. And nothing needs to be decided all at once. I think this is about letting things kind of unfold and the adjustment period and really the next month as being that unfoldment. Even if there wasn't an eclipse going on in your 6th house, I would still tell you with Mars going into your 12th, you need rest. If I saw the Mercury retrograde in your 12th house, you need rest. And some of you guys might be reevaluating or reassessing what's going on with like health results, or you're making a big contemplation or decision about a job. I would be leaning more into letting go of feeling like you have to do and be focusing more on how you feel. If you can do that, then that's really going to be the way that you're going to kind of get through this eclipse season, and also be, I think, a little bit more capable and ready to embrace some of the things that are going to be going on in April when all those planets are coming into your sign and they're coming into conjunction with Saturn and Neptune. So I think that's what you guys need. I'm going to pull a card for you and give you guys some insight with the tarot and see what the tarot wants you to know. All right, so let's take a look. So give me some insight for Aries and Aries risings. What do they need to know during this Virgo eclipse? The card that I got for you guys is the Sun card, which I think is great because it's about that inner light, right? The sun is about like creativity and joy and happiness and fulfillment. And I know some Aries and Aries risings are really struggling to see the positive in some of this stuff, especially if you're in early degrees Aries, because you're going through that Saturn-Neptune conjunction. But really what I think it's saying is the sun is moving through the 12th house of the dream world. This can be about spirituality. It can be about soaking and healing and feeling inspired, or vision boarding, and that creative energy that the sun is kind of connected to in your 5th house. Like, I can't tell you how many times as an Aries moon, having gone through these eclipses, that, you know, I'll get down with food poisoning when I have an eclipse in my 6th or my 12th house, or I have horrible insomnia, or, you know, I have a flu or something for a week. And I just have amazing rest and sleep, and it makes me come back feeling more recharged and wanting to create and having like a better appreciation, not only for my health, but also for what I do for work, right? And so, I mean, it's unfortunate that that stuff has to happen, but that's what it's done for me. So if you find yourself in a situation where there's some isolated things going on, or you're feeling kind of alone, or maybe you're feeling like you are down in bed, or you're taking time to kind of just rest and reflect, watch the energy, the creativity, the inspiration start to kind of come back. Watch for opportunities for you to kind of tap into some of those more kind of Piscean things, because I think that there's actually going to be some really beautiful things that can come from it, and also some much needed rest, so you're feeling 100% next month. Good luck, Aries. Let me know what happens. All right, Taurus and Taurus risings, you guys are going to be doing this full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo in your 5th house in a fellow sister Earth sign. So if you're like 11, 12, 13 degrees of Taurus, you're receiving a trine from this eclipse. It's pretty friendly for most of the aspects for you guys. And obviously the 5th house Taurus is all about creativity. It's about romance. It's about self-expression. And I think really what the question that it's raising under this eclipse in your 5th house is, what does pleasure really mean when you're not doing it in a performative way, right? When you're not doing something that's out of habit or tied to approval. And I say that because that's what the eclipse is in the 5th house. It's about not just creating just for the sake of creating or because people are watching, but so you can connect and collaborate truly with other people. And I say that because Venus is moving through the 11th house at the time of this eclipse. It is kind of indicating through the retrograde that you're kind of trying to figure that out. I do think that this is really about you guys shifting gears and going, okay, what feels alive to you? What has started to kind of feel like an obligation dressed up as a desire? And so there may be some things that you've been working on or creating or taking care of, or maybe it's a relationship or things that involve children that you're like, okay, it's time for me to kind of release this and let this go. I think that what you're going to start to do is approach creative projects differently, approach relationships or the idea of kids or children differently. This is also really bringing to light, in an almost like surgical way, it's illuminating the ways creatively or romance may have actually become overly managed or like too concerned with getting it right. So creative projects, dating, love affairs, self-expression. And I think that this is a tender release because it's in a similar element as you. It's releasing an old story about what you're allowed to want. And I think a creative identity that you've been kind of loyal to for very long may have stopped inspiring you. And so you're going to realize under this eclipse, it's okay, I can let that go. I don't have to hold on to it. Maybe it's time for me to let go of some of these pleasures, focus more on connection, collaboration, and community. So you're not like racking your brain feeling like you have to get something perfect. Now, obviously, there can be other manifestations. There can be big things going on with your kids. There could be a release of a romantic kind of partnership if it's more kind of not committed, if it's something that's more casual. This could also mean that there can be unexpected things that can happen through the 5th house. There could be shocks and surprises revolving around trading or things that are connected to also pregnancy. So watch for that, Taurus. I do think that that Venus coming into conjunction with Mercury makes me feel like it's a good time to get connected with community, to kind of bring that spark back. So you're not feeling like you're in this monotonous grind. And especially if you're self-employed, I think that could be something else that's kind of indicating that as well. All right, so let's see, what do the cards say for Taurus about this eclipse? Wow, you get the Judgment card. So it might be a time where you're like, yeah, the time has come, and for some of you guys, it doesn't have to be negative. It can mean like, I've been slaving away over this thing and now I'm ready to release it. I'm getting ready to release something I've been working on and share it with my friends, share it with my community, share it with my audience. Certainly the oppositions to the 11th house can be that. But I think it's time to get to the core of what does not feel authentic creatively, like what's not making you happy. Like you don't have to force it anymore. And I think that that's going to be really important because judgment is saying now is the time. It's time to clear that out if it's something that you need to let go, or if you don't have to be attached to something. It could be a romantic partner. It could be something that's connected to old love stories or romantic connections. It could also mean that there is some heart healing going on and kind of healing the inner child. Releasing it and being able to do that in group settings or with community, I think really is going to be the key for you guys, okay? Good luck. Let me know what happens, Taurus. All right, we've got Gemini and Gemini rising. You guys are going to be experiencing the full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo in your natal 4th house. If you happen to be a Gemini, 11, 12, 13 degrees, sun, lunar rising, this will be squaring you. So you're going to be feeling the impact of this, and you will be the focal point of what we call a T-square. So your intellect, your communication, your actions, you are going to be front and center of feeling like you're at a turning point between what's going on at home and what's going on with your career. That could mean anything from moving to support a new career. It could also mean that there is some career unsureness and you're wondering how this is going to impact your home or your living situation or your family. And there is this polarity between the 10th house of status, reputation, career, or authority, and the 4th house of home, family, emotions, and the past. So just watch for that. Maybe reflect on what was kind of going on for you, especially last spring, because this is very similar to what we saw then. With this total lunar eclipse taking place in your 4th house, it's almost like a low hum beneath the floorboards. And so it's kind of drawing your attention inward towards, the rooms that maybe, you haven't been in a while, that you haven't kind of taken care of, or you haven't inhabited, or maybe moved things around in, or kind of like cleaned up. And really the 4th house, I think, is connected to that private architecture in your life. So sure, your home, but it can also be your memory, your family, your emotional safety, the habits that you return to when life gets difficult or when work gets challenging. It's that retreat. So I think that you're already kind of like familiar with this energy. You have seen that there has probably been a lot of emotional changes with your family. Some of you guys have moved, others have been, renovating homes or gutting homes. But I think with this Virgo eclipse coming in, it's asking you to really slow the mental spin and listen to what's been kind of going on and getting reorganized in your inner world and becoming more conscious of that, right? Becoming more conscious of what's going on. Now, it can also impact your family, if you've got roommates, if you've got people you live with. But I think it's about redefining what it means to have stability. And I also think that this is about old expectations about what home is supposed to feel like, now changing. Obviously, the ruler at the time is also your ruler. So I can see you going through this kind of reassessment of what is my responsibility? What am I doing out in the world? Where am I going to be working? What's going on with my kind of professional life? And you're going to feel naturally that you want out of the house and into the world. So it can mean that you're moving for a job. It can also mean that, you're trying to figure out how to navigate your work stuff when you would rather be home. It's not unusual to have to go home, spend time with family, or have like an all hands on deck moment where it might be pulling you out of work because of some stuff that's going on emotionally. So I feel like this is a moment of doing that emotional housekeeping. It's subtle, but it is necessary. And it's really this recognition that something foundationally in your life has shifted. Even if nothing on the surface looks different, things are going to feel very different after this particular eclipse. And I think that for those of you guys who are wanting to move, relocate, sell your home, spend time with family, all that stuff, it's really going to kind of bring a lot of that front and center, with also this reassessment that's like, do I have time for juggling that with my schedule, or how much of these things are actually my responsibility? All right, Gemini, let's take a look and let's see what do the cards have to say for you under this Virgo eclipse in your 4th house. The card that you get is the Hermit card. I was like, who's going to get it? Gemini got it. So maybe it really is saying that this is a quiet retreat from what feels like a bit of like a, everything is up in the air kind of moment. I could definitely see a lot of Gemini and Gemini risings that are like, well, if I don't have to work here, if I quit my job, if I retired, or if I got let go, or like if something like this happened, where do I want to live? Am I now free to have the decision to kind of go anywhere? It could also mean that some of you guys are getting out of the home and back into the office, or vice versa. There could be a lot of like flip-flop going on there. But Virgo and the Hermit card are really about knowing the truth within. You know, holding that lantern up and being like, I know that this is something I have to deal with, or I know that I need to heal this, or I have to go my own way. And it may be that moment where it's less about balancing work and also your home and your family. It's more about that sense of personal authority that's like, I don't have to take this, you know, or I don't have to be responsible for this. I don't have to carry this karmic burden. So you're more willing to kind of go out of the shadows and into the light and really focus on how you can show other people that you can stand up for yourself, you can take accountability, that you don't have to carry on some of these family or kind of like ancestral patterns, and not be feeling like or being seen as like a victim of what's changing with your family, your home, or your emotional world. So very therapeutic. I hope it's a good one for you, Gemini. Let me know what happens. All right, Cancer and Cancer risings. Well, you guys are ruled by the moon, so lunar eclipses definitely impact you. And this one in Virgo is relatively friendly, actually, with you. Earth and water are good friends. So if you happen to have anything 11, 12, 13 degrees Cancer, Cancer rising, this is sextiling you, so it's a friendly energy. The lunar eclipse in your third house, Cancer, is really about refining your voice, okay? So sometimes when the South Node goes through there, we have a hard time finding the words. We don't exactly know how to put the pen to paper. Sometimes it's difficult to finish the website, post the blog. It's challenging maybe to communicate with relatives or to move. And certainly there could be things like that coming up. There's a lot of reassessing. Am I going to sign that lease? Am I buying a car? Is it time, you know, to put my writing out there? What do I have to learn? Where am I going? What do I think? What do I believe in? These are some of the topics that you're going to kind of see coming up during this eclipse. And I think that, you know, you're already deeply intuitive and very emotionally literate. I don't think that's the issue, but you're in ways that don't always translate clearly into language. Intuition is something that's hard to define with words. It's just a feeling. So the Virgo eclipse is kind of asking you to become more intentional with how you communicate, especially with yourself, because the moon is you. So the third house governs, you know, siblings, neighbors, short journeys, everyday rhythms of connection and kind of communication. But something here may shift, and it can mean that maybe it's a recalibration of how much access others have to your inner world. It can mean that you're reassessing something before you sign it, you're rethinking something. And obviously the ruler is retrograde in the ninth. Some of you guys might be thinking about going back to school. Maybe you guys are trying to renew documents. Some of you guys are experiencing travel delays or delays with moving or relocating. So that can happen. But I think the Virgo energy is really helping you sort and, you know, kind of signal from noise and learning how to define what is your intuition versus what is kind of going on out in the world. And being able to tap into your intuition and kind of release the anxiety of having conversations, going places, doing things, and overextending yourself. So it's time to really acknowledge that words, I think, here are spells, and no matter how mundane they seem, words are very important right now. So if you're writing things down about stuff that you want to release, I would recommend doing that. And that could be anxiety, fears, you know, old, outdated beliefs. Really lean into writing, learning, speaking. They can definitely be very therapeutic right now. And I think that this is about shifting something about your philosophy, as it's highlighting the polarity in your ninth house. This can also mean legal documents, travel documents. It could also mean applying for schools or making changes with your education path. So keep an eye out for that. And I honestly think that for a lot of you, you know, this is going to be a very big turning point just in shifting your perspective and what it is that you believe in. So faith can be a big deal when you're kind of looking at Mercury's tie to the 12th house as well as the retrograde in your ninth. So let's see what we can tell the Cancers and the Cancer risings about how this eclipse might be impacting them in the third. I mean, obvious dead giveaways is, you know, sometimes traveling, moving, relocating. Stuff with siblings, keep an eye on your vehicles. Be careful when you're driving too, when you have an eclipse in the third. The card that I get is the Lovers card. I wonder if that has anything to do with the fact that Mercury is obviously the ruler of this eclipse. It's connected to this through Gemini, and it's retrograding conjunct Venus. So are you returning back to a spiritual practice, a place, a person that you truly love and align with? Could there be some karmic relationship stuff going on involving travel? Perhaps. It's also an indication that it's kind of like being at like a fork in the road, and it's like, am I going to go in this direction, in that direction? And a lot of it's going to require support, education, mentorship. Faith, I think, would be, or spiritual practice would be another one. And I would recommend a lot of you guys go back to spiritual teachings or go back to meditation or reconnect with a guru or a mentor to help you sort out what the next phase is going to be. I know a lot of you guys are on the precipice of making some very big career changes. And so this might mean that this is the time that you start doing that and getting reconnected with people to help you kind of find your way forward. Good luck, Cancer. Let me know what happens. For Leo and Leo rising, you guys are going to be experiencing a lunar eclipse in Virgo in your natal second house. Now, this is important because this is a lunar eclipse, which means the moon is opposing the sun, and the sun rules your chart. For you in Aquarius, these are very financial kind of turning points as you see the eclipses in the second or the 8th house. So for you guys, that second house is really turning your attention towards value in its most intimate kind of forms. The moon rules the 12th house of what's kind of hidden in private. What you earn, what you keep, what you rely on, and probably what you quietly believe that you're worth. So I'll tell you this, yes, there can be money fluctuations when you see an eclipse here for sure, but it can also be a time to lean into that and go, I'm gonna declutter, I'm gonna give stuff away, I'm gonna sell things, I'm gonna clean out closets, I'm gonna have a garage sale. It doesn't have to be all financial doom and gloom, although I do think some of you guys are gonna be feeling a little tight when it comes to resources or self-esteem, and that's really what you're gonna wanna watch for. Now, I think that Virgo's eclipse here is asking you to ground in something that's steadier, right? So if there's something taken away, if there's some financial situation where something is removed from you, it was not sustainable or it was not something that was going to bring you, I think, joy in the long run anyway. It may also show you where you've been kind of over giving to prove your value, right? You picking up the check too much, going out to dinner with friends? Are you trying to buy love? Are you trying to, make more money, but you're beating yourself up because you're feeling like you're not good enough? So this is going to show you if you've been selling yourself short or undercharging emotionally, energetically, or materially. And that's because it felt easier than just asking for more. Ask for more, Leo. Ask for more, because the retrograde Mercury and the sun, which is your ruler, is going through the 8th house of other people giving more. Now, it might be emotionally, sure, it could be a tax refund, it could be a wealthy spouse, whatever. But I think it's just needing more of that emotional security. I'm pretty confident that with the Mercury Cazimi, there's going to be some kind of exciting news about a positive turn of resources, and it might mean that, a credit card gets extended, maybe you are able to consolidate debt, maybe you win something, maybe you are awarded something or you inherit something. And you can see that in the weeks to come. But I think that it's more just about validating your worthiness and that other people are showing up and they're supporting you in some way. And I also think that this can show up, sure, through finances, but it can show up just as much through your kind of self-worth as well. The release here, I think, is outdated measures of success. I have to have the expensive things, the big house, the nice car. It's more about shifting away from possessions or even commitment or a role that once made you feel secure, but now it feels kind of heavy. So for you guys, the shadow is going to kind of lift, and I think that it might feel a little bit more quiet, a little bit more private, but definitely a lot more grounded. And like from this place moving forward now, your generosity is no longer going to be depleted. And I think that's really the big takeaway. And you guys will have to let me know what's kind of manifesting and changing for you. But I think the North Node and the retrograde in your 8th house is definitely bringing more through other people, more support. All right, let's take a look. What can we tell the Leos and the Leo risings about this Virgo eclipse? What do they need to know? Can you give them some advice? The Empress, wow. Well, certainly, I mean, without being said, this could be dealing with mothers, okay? Motherhood, mothers of some kind. And I'm looking at Mars coming into the 8th house. So if you are a mom, I think you're about to be cherished and valued, and maybe, people are going to be more generous with you, your kids, your family, and just appreciating how much you give and sacrifice for them. Inheritance, mothers somehow influencing or being involved in helping pay for expenses or things connecting to property, because Mars rules the 4th house and it's coming into the 8th. It could also mean that, it could be about pregnancy or motherhood. So those of you guys who are contemplating or thinking about starting a family, it can be the precursor for that. Not surprised knowing that Jupiter is going to go into your sign, and the next eclipse we'll have will actually be in Leo. So Some of you guys might be trying to financially kind of get some things in order, or emotionally or psychologically get some things in order in dealing with changes with the house and home. But mother figures, strong women, and also investing in yourself, knowing your worth, that's so connected to the Empress card. And so I think a lot of you guys are feeling your way into it and you're trusting the process. Cool reading for Leos. Let me know how that resonates with you guys. And of course, my Virgos and my Virgo risings, you guys are going to be experiencing a lunar eclipse in your sign. So if you're anywhere from 11, 12, 13 degrees of Virgo, sun, moon, or rising, this is very personal for you. I want you guys to go back and I want you to think about what has happened over the last year or so. Because you've had enough of these eclipses now to kind of see where there's been some pretty dramatic changes in the self and releasing and letting go or shedding old skin, and you've been kind of embracing changes within relationships. Now, if you haven't, you still have time to see that. I just want to reiterate that. More eclipses are coming in your 7th house over the summer. But I definitely feel like this has you in reaction or response to relationships written all over it. Now, it's funny because the eclipse is in your sign. So yes, big changes, physical changes, emotional changes, shifts. South node eclipses can be cutting hair, changing the way that you look, adding muscle, losing weight, that kind of stuff. But the ruler, which is your ruler, is retrograde in the 7th. So there's a lot of feeling like I'm just giving to others. And that emotional kind of drain, and whether or not you're on the same page with relationships, and if you guys are wanting the same things, if you have the same goals, right? Because the moon represents kind of team effort, and Mercury is retrograding in your 7th. So you may be in the midst of some really big relationship changes. Virgo risings, I think that for you guys, it's illuminating the very edge of your being. So what you're going to find is that with this particular eclipse, you guys often like to kind of live in this internal editor kind of like form, and it's like it never turns off. And I love you guys. Thank God that you guys can do that. I couldn't do it. But the eclipse isn't asking you for another upgrade, okay? What it's asking you for is to ask for permission to stop performing your own, need of being the savior, right? Or being the fixer. And I think that that's one of the downfalls of the South Node going through your sign, is that sometimes we don't want to look at our stuff. So, rather than looking at our stuff, we'll get consumed with what's kind of going on with like dysfunctional relationships, really anxious attachment type of relationships, people who can't love you the way that you need to be loved, that kind of stuff. So it's going to feel like you're shedding this old skin. And a lot of you guys have been going through a lot of these changes for the last year and a half, but this might be particularly tied to relationships because of the last eclipse, which opposed Saturn and Neptune. So it's going to bring this sense of heightened self-awareness, even vulnerability, and for sure you'll be wearing your heart on your sleeve, so expect the emotions. And you're going to notice how much of your energy has actually gone into being useful, competent, or correct, and how little has actually been going into being present in your body. And so I really encourage my Virgo and Virgo risings to work with other people, right? Even you guys who you have it all kind of buttoned up. Pisces in the 7th means you benefit from talking to a therapist, an astrologer, an energy healer, a hypnotherapist, a massage therapist, these kinds of things, and connecting with somebody who can give you feedback, because you may feel like relationships are changing through that retrograde and you're like, what's wrong with me? Why don't they want to be with me? And it's not so much you, it's that other people are going through changes and you need dialogue from somebody who can be kind of like neutral. So I think that with the first house, it's asking for embodiment, and it can mean that, nothing here needs to be decided or changed instantly. I think a lot of this is still reverberating off of what advice you're being given or what's changing in your relationships, and it will unfold over the better part of the next 6 months. So I think one honest acknowledgement of what you no longer want to carry is key during this particular eclipse. Watch for the glow ups, the changes that can happen. I mean, certainly, if you're changing who you are, you'll see the change in dynamic in relationships or with business partners or with clients. That can definitely happen here as well. And I also think that, this can also be an eclipse where some Virgos and Virgo risings are going to make big decisions in relationships. Like, are we staying together? Are we moving on? Are we going to be going to the next level? Are we going to be talking about moving? Do we have the same goals? And also, some of you guys may also find out that you're pregnant as a result of this particular eclipse over the next 6 months or so. So if that's a goal of yours, pay attention. All right, what can we tell Virgos and Virgo risings about this eclipse? What do they need to know? It's a lot of what you value in relationships, right? because of that conjunction to Venus. And Mars in your 7th house too. It's like you're either merging together stronger, more forged, or you're going to be breaking something down or cutting something loose. So let's see, what does Virgo need to hear? Queen of Pentacles. I love that, especially, I mean, obviously if you're a queen, but this can be saying that you're finally kind of going, I know what I need. And remember, when the Mercury retrograde happens, you can be segueing back to a therapist, back to a partner, you know, figuring out what your audience needs, what your clients needs. But I think it's going to be good for your health, believe it or not. I think it's also going to be about getting more so grounded. And so if you're wanting to work with a dietitian, a financial advisor, if you're wanting to work with a therapist, if you're wanting to, you know, bring in a more solid relationship or just better sense of self and feeling valued and worthy and knowing your worth, I mean, this is going to be wonderful for you. It can bring in the help of other earth signs. So another Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn can kind of come along and they can play a role in this as well. And I also think that for some of you guys, it could represent just getting to the next leg of getting serious when it comes to your professional status, your reputation, your career. Even though it has nothing to do with that, Mercury does rule that. So it can be some changes with how you're trying to connect with clients or maybe what you're selling if you have like a business that's going to be, you know, producing products or services. But you're really getting your wits about you and trying to figure out what other people want so you can kind of draw more in, okay? Very great for you, Virgo. Let me know what happens. All right, for Libras and Libra risings, you guys are going to be doing this lunar eclipse in Virgo in your natal 12th house. Obviously, the 12th house is hidden Libra, so a lot of the things that are kind of going on are either going to come out of left field, they're going to happen in your dreams, it's going to happen, you know, and expose something that's going to kind of come out of your subconscious. There's going to be something that's going to kind of happen when you're in the middle of meditation or, you know, while you're in like an altered state. The 12th house can be healing centers, churches, temples, hospital stays. But I have experienced it more as just like a lot of subconscious like criticism. And I think that's just part of the nature of having Virgo 12th house to your ascendant. If you're a Libra rising, stress about work, worrying about the details, you know, lack of sleep, that kind of stuff. So this is a liminal space where things dissolve before they can actually be named. And I keep saying to myself, these are like the things that have been like living rent free in my head that seem to kind of like rear their head every single time that we have these transits or eclipses. I think with this eclipse, you're being attuned to balance, and it's about relational harmony. And you're being asked to really focus on the visible exchange between the self and others, right? But in the 12th house, it's turning the lights low. So we're going to see that it's drawing attention to what's been like quietly operating beneath the surface. And it can be about unconscious patterns of like caretaking, unconscious guilt, emotional labor that you've taken on without realizing it. And it was like never really yours to hold. Now, at the time of the eclipse, Venus, which is your ruler, is very close to Mercury. So this means that a lot of Libra and Libra risings are needing to lean more into navigating their health and their habits more at an intuitive level. Flow workouts, meditation, saunas, soaks, anything that's going to be about listening to what your body is telling you and not being too focused on the details. I think with a retrograde in your 6th and an eclipse in your 12th, you have to watch your health and your sleep cycles because there can be some stuff that's kind of off there. And I think it's going to reveal to you, you know, where maybe you have been managing invisible responsibilities that people do not see. All the busy work that goes behind everything that you're kind of doing, right? The things that you're trying to fix, the things you're trying to smooth over, the anticipated outcomes, you know, and doing it all silently, and the impact that that actually takes on you physically or emotionally. Likely you're going to feel more tired than usual and a little bit more introspective. So, you know, take rest as it's needed, you know, try to work intuitively with as best you can. Dreams are probably going to be very active with eclipses here, and that's because old memories, past lives, subconscious things are kind of coming back up. And you will start to see some of the self-criticism or bad habits that kind of rear their ugly head. And that's where you have to really lean into the 6th house with the retrograde and with Venus there to really be on the path of taking care of your body and trying to be in balance. Acknowledge what needs to be released. The 12th house is really asking for a surrender. It's asking for rest. And I would be trusting what happens when you stop intervening with all the busy work. All right, Libra, let's see. No whammies, no whammies. What do we need to tell Libras and Libra risings for this Virgo eclipse in the 12th house? The card that I get is the Three of Cups, which is so interesting because that's not a eclipsey in the 12th house type of card, but I could see this as like a reunification. Like there are parts of yourselves that have been fragmented because you have been service or helping or dealing with never-ending schedules or things going on with coworkers or pets or healing things. And now it's like there can be something that you can finally release that can be celebrated. And so now you're able to kind of integrate. It's been hard, man. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like just being a Libra rising, you know, traditionally the 6th house is about order and the 12th house is kind of about disorder, and you've got them in inverted houses. So you have to really learn how to lean into both houses. And so it's not all just, you know, mind. Some of it can be body and spirit and vice versa. Healing groups, I think, would be good with the Three of Cups. Working with a private healing community, a meditation group, you know, celebrating the wins of the things that you are able to accomplish, even if you're feeling like you're a little run down, and having the time to be able to stop and smell the roses and enjoy what you're doing. So much about the Mercury retrograde conjunct Venus is about that. It's about reminding you why you do the work that you're doing, why you help people or you give service to others. And I think that if you can do it in a way where you're not running yourself down, you might actually enjoy it a little bit more. So let me know, Libra. Good luck with that eclipse. Virgos, for Scorpios and Scorpio risings, I'm looking at that Virgo lunar eclipse in your 11th house. Scorpio, in a sign that's friendly for you, especially if you're like a mid-degree Scorpio or Scorpio rising, it's sextiling you. And obviously when you have a lunar eclipse taking place in your 11th house, this is highlighting your groups, your friends, communities, networks, and the visions that you hold for your life, right? So this is about wish fulfillment, granting things. And I think this eclipse is really going to put it under a magnifying lens, kind of showing you what has been working when it comes to your alliances and what has actually been weighing you down. Now, Virgo's energy is precise, so it kind of cuts through the expectation and kind of pretense, and really it reveals more of like the subtle currents beneath your group friend dynamics. And this could be online, in person, at work. So I think some strong connections may quietly fade. You may also see that it's not fading with drama. It's just simply because their energy is no longer aligning with yours. So it can be like a frequency change. And at the time of this particular eclipse, you are going to see Mars, your ruler, going into the 5th house. So it's almost like you're eclipsing out certain friends, communities, networks, because you're prioritizing more of what you're creating, what you love, who you're dating, what your kids are doing, what's going on with your business, things that you're going to enjoy that's more creative and kind of exploratory. Now, I also think that this eclipse is going to sharpen your sense of purpose. And I say that because Mars is going into your 5th house. So you're getting more passionate about what you want. And I also think that this is what collective or societal efforts truly reflect in your values. I think that's going to be something else that's going to come up for you, where you've been pouring energy into shoulds rather than meaningful action. So yeah, you might have to kind of feel like you're leaving certain online groups, you're not as maybe proactive with hanging out with friends, or maybe there's some shifts going on with like your work crew, and it's giving you the opportunity to really focus more on what's going to bring you joy and what you love. There can also be just a lot of, before you go and you share with other people something that you're working on, you're having to put like the finishing kind of touches on a creative project or a launch or something that you're going to be working on. So I could see that as well. But really, this is about purifying your social sphere, and it allows you to kind of like channel your energy more in a flow to what matters most, what's going to bring you joy, and what's going to be most creative. Good time to do a purge of social media. I mean, get rid of a bunch of people you don't talk to anymore. It can also be a time that you may be considering coming back and making an announcement. The only reason why you're making an announcement on the socials or in any kind of public sphere is because there's something going on that it's regarding your love life, something you've created, something that involves your kids. But I do think that this is going to be quite a fun one for you guys. Some of you guys might find yourselves at parties and then you're just kind of like, why am I here? I don't resonate with these people, you know? And you'll shift into spending some of that time doing things that you enjoy rather than feeling like you're just kind of following the crowd. You'll continue to go through this also as Mars, your ruler, goes through the 5th house and Mercury retrogrades through there. And certain friends may come back who are meant to kind of connect and collaborate with you specifically. All right, so let's take a look and let's see, Scorpio, what can we tell you about this Virgo eclipse? What does Scorpio need to know about this eclipse in the 11th? The card that I get is the Nine of Pentacles. You're like, no, I'm going my own way. I've seen what I need to see here. And it could quite literally mean that you're just not following the crowd, right? So whatever everybody else is doing, you want to go the other way. But this is also meaning that you're going to be successful in whatever this is. So if you're cutting ties, if you're leaving groups or associations, you're doing it for good reason. That's because you probably realize you're better off doing it on your own, or that you don't need the support of other people, or that you're just outgrowing some of those kind of networks. And I love that this card shows a woman who's independent, wealthy, self-sufficient, confident, like doesn't need anybody else. Because it's saying you're realizing your time is better spent on those fifth house things. So whether it's your love life, a creative project, a kid, maybe even, a relationship, this is going to be something that's going to bring you, I think, more joy and also abundance in the long run. So maybe your priorities are shifting a little bit from the social sphere to what's going to make you happy and succeed. Good luck, Scorpio. That's a great reading for you. Let me know what happens. For Sag and Sag rising, you guys are going to be doing this lunar eclipse in Virgo in your natal 10th house of career, reputation, professional status, also your responsibility. So even if you're retired, you're not working, this is about your role out in the world and society. Now, Sag, if you happen to have anything 11, 12, 13 degrees, Sag, sun, moon, or rising, you will be squared by this eclipse, and it is a closing square against you. So it will feel like there's a bit of pressure within your role in, your career, your reputation, or changes that's happening in the professional field. Now, you've been through a lot of these over the last couple of years, so maybe reflect on what the themes have been where you've been kind of pulled between going out into the world and what you're kind of doing on the home front, or emotionally where you would rather be. Now, Sagittarius, as it comes into the 10th house, it's also putting you in the spotlight. So your public life, long-term ambitions, visibility, all of that stuff is going to be seen. So sometimes with these eclipses, you quit a job, you launch a business, you decide that you're going to change gears and go in a different kind of career path. It can also mean there are some things going on with parents or with superiors, so watch for that. But this is a south node eclipse, so it can mean that it's an ongoing process of trying to kind of untangle you from responsibility or public life. And a lot of that's because Mercury is retrograding in your 4th house of home. Now, your chart ruler, Jupiter, is slightly aspecting this. So you see like Mercury, where communication on the home zone, and even the sun, which talks about action on the home zone, is trining Jupiter. So you're not just out of work and at home for no good reason. You may be there because you're supposed to be dealing with stuff on the home front, or taking care of a parent, or maybe you're moving. Maybe it means that your responsibility is more on your emotions or your kind of private life right now. And I think that really this kind of suggests that you're slowing down and examining the details of the balance between work and also your career. Now, the 10th house is also about legacy, but I think Virgo is reminding you that legacy is built on consistency, and it's also about integrity and daily care. And if you can't have that kind of peace and consistency at home, it's going to be harder to have that out in the workspace. So for you, this is a moment of like recalibration, and you may feel like, a project might need refining rather than abandoning. And if you're just not emotionally capable of putting it out right now, you're just going to take a little bit of time. It could also mean a professional relationship may require honesty rather than some kind of performance. And when the eclipse passes, you're going to feel like you're more grounded in your purpose, or that you're more intentional when it comes to your visibility. You're more aligned when it comes to what actually matters and what actually works at work. So expansion is still yours, but it's guided by, I think, a little bit more clarity and structure and like this quiet confidence rather than just instinct or enthusiasm. I also think that the sheer nature of the square to you might mean that there are certain changes that are happening at work that might feel like it's out of your control. So bosses can step down. You can also see that there can be some changes in your role, your responsibility, quitting, changing jobs, going back to jobs. These things kind of happen. And it's all playing off of this Mercury retrograde in your 4th house, where you may have to go back home or deal with home or family or property related matters. And that might be actually pulling you away from the spotlight, or you're just taking a little bit of much needed downtime. All right, well, let's take a look and see, what do we need to tell our Sag and Sag rising friends? What do they need to know about this eclipse? surely the Sun trine Jupiter can be good for relocations, and that might be why there's some job change, or traveling and you're taking time away from your job is another interpretation. The card that I got for you guys is the Two of Cups, which is an amazing card. This is the card of unity and togetherness and relationships. So it can be about big relationship statuses that are changing. So engagements, marriages, proposals, business partnerships, launches, new offerings can definitely happen. Great card for what can be a challenging eclipse for you guys. I think that this is about who's got your back and who's supporting you while you're going through all of these changes out in the world. Who's celebrating your wins, your business success, who's celebrating the new job, who's supporting you while you're trying to get that promotion. I think it's about just reconnecting to family and those who are the closest to you, like your partners or even your siblings or your parents, to help you through this process, because I think that there is something to kind of, you know, give you that pat on the back when you have all these planets going through the 4th house. So you might find yourself going to family dinners or, you know, kind of gatherings, and people are talking you up about how successful you've been, what you've been able to accomplish. Take the compliments, take the support, because it looks like this is your earned time in the sun. Good luck to my Sag and Sag risings. Let me know what happens, guys. For Capricorn and Capricorn rising, you guys are going to be experiencing a full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo in your natal 9th house. Now, if you happen to be a Capricorn, 11, 12, or 13 degrees, this will be trining you. So it's a very friendly energy for you guys. I think you're going to like it. And definitely let me know, because I know the last eclipse was in opposition to Saturn. So it definitely has like a Saturn signature, even in this one. So there is going to be some major impacts definitely for my Capricorn and Capricorn risings. Now, the 9th house, where you have this lunar eclipse in Virgo, is really turning your attention towards your belief systems. So it could be long journeys, it could be graduations, it could be ceremonies, it could be legal matters, but it does deal with journeys, okay? So, you know, getting through something, learning something, you know, what you learn about yourself, experiences you have, both literal and metaphorical. So Capricorn, you know, there can be some changes to your travel plans. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that can definitely come up here. With the South Node moon, and it can be brought up through changes with your relationship. So it can mean that you're pivoting last minute to travel to see a partner, or somebody's having to come and see you, or maybe you're postponing or delaying something. I could also see with this lunar eclipse in the 9th that something that you believed in that was solid starts to reveal the cracks. Not seeing eye to eye with teachers, questioning, you know, your major if you're in school, debating whether or not you still believe in health or medical kind of systems, Virgo. You'll start to see that subtle truths kind of emerge, and it allows you to build again with steadier foundations. And you're doing that through, you know, learning how to reassess, how to do your own research, how to communicate better, as you see all these planets going through Pisces in your 3rd. Travel plans, studies, or commitments that were once inspiring may feel draining now or kind of misaligned. You can also find that you're refining your approach, and you're kind of distinguishing between what actually expands your mind and what merely kind of consumes your energy. And you're deciding how much you want to talk about that stuff, how much you want to watch that stuff, how much you want to give energy to it. And now you're learning that it's more about precision, not necessarily pressure. So if you're feeling pressured to travel, change your decision with school, to sign contracts, to push a publishing date, anything like that, you're going to feel like, no, I can't do that. And I think it's really because this is a moment where you're seeing that there can be this rigidity that can kind of come up in your thinking. And so often, you know, as a Capricorn, you carry responsibility kind of as a weight. And obviously in a Capricorn degree, you're being asked to loosen the grip of just enough, you know, so that way you can let insight and kind of intuition flow. Be willing to question narratives, be willing to get outside of the box. Obviously, you know, your chart ruler is Saturn and it is conjunct Neptune. So I could definitely see a lot of Capricorn and Capricorn risings that were anticipating traveling, you know, relocating, moving. And it almost seems like the bigger picture of what this looks like, where you're going, the process, how you get there, the paperwork, the legal stuff, you know, is delaying things a little bit. So you may feel very grounded and very anchored. And you may also feel like there's some changes that are going to be potentially happening where it's not about going to far away places, it's actually trying to stay closer and more local. So less plane rides, more car rides, basically, with all the planets that are going through the 3rd house. And I know a lot of you guys are really either on the education train right now, or you're focusing on publishing or writing or websites or local businesses, or you're focusing on potentially moving. And I would say that can also put a kink in plans, as if you're trying to have to, move more quickly than you thought, or you're exploring new places. Lean into that. Think about places that are a little bit more easily accessible and kind of closer to you. All right, so let's take a look. Let's see, what can we tell our Capricorn and Capricorn risings about this eclipse? What do they need to know? The card that I get for you is the Ten of Swords. Well, somebody was bound to get it. I think that this is telling me that there can be some disappointments in communication with relationships. And I don't know if this is going to be like sibling relationships, if it's going to be spousal relationships, if it's going to be relationships with partners at a distance, but be very careful with communication, because this is the ending card, okay? The Ten of Swords is about like being disappointed or feeling that there was a disappointing conversation or an ending of something, or that something was kind of like removed or released. So you get that sense of peace and you're like, oh, okay, now I don't have to deal with it anymore. But it reads to me like some very long, coming conversations that you were going to have with somebody about, what is or is not working for you. And this could be legal disruptions. This could be, family issues, relational issues. The positive is that you've got quite a few planets that are trining Jupiter, so it doesn't have to be make or break, but I do feel like you're going to feel as if there are some things that are just out of your control, and you're like, you know what, I'm not going to keep pushing this boulder up this hill. I just have to let this go. I have to just kind of regroup. You'll see this happen over the better part of the next couple of months, so just try to hang in there, and if you're feeling a little limited, get out, go walking, try to do things like that are very third house, so you're not feeling super landlocked when it comes to your transits in the fourth house. Good luck. For Aquarius and Aquarius rising, you guys are going to have the Virgo lunar eclipse taking place in your natal 8th house. Obviously very financial for you and for my Leo risings, and you've already kind of seen some of this stuff through the Mercury retrograde in your 2nd. Now for Aquarius, having an eclipse in the 8th house is a house that can be very emotional. It can represent things that are psychological or involving other people's money, or they're touching on intimacy, taxes, inheritances, loans, debt. All of that stuff comes through the 8th house. And this eclipse is very quiet here, okay? So you're going to see that as it moves through the 8th house, it's the realm of transformation, shared resources, and intimacy, and everything that lies beneath. So for you, Aquarius, this is interesting because obviously the ruler is retrograde in your 2nd house. So where the 8th house eclipses can be shocking and surprising, where a partner loses their job, or maybe there is some dramatic decision about, a tax bill that's due, or maybe perhaps you're in a situation where money that you have been waiting to kind of come falls apart. The ruler is retrograding in your 2nd. So it does talk a lot about, resources and support coming and changes to your resources. It's just being a little delayed because Mercury is retrograde. It also means that this is an eclipse that's about emotional and financial intimacy. So the places where resources are pooled is very much the 8th house merge, where you can give more than you receive. And there may be revelations around joint finances, taxes, debt, or inheritances. That's all getting sorted out through your 2nd house, during the retrograde over the next month. But it's clear to me that something needs to be released here. I think it's like a dynamic that's kept you in this cycle, and it might be a truth that you've been avoiding about how you share with other people. And I think it's going to be very deep. It can be an internal shift, one that happens in intimate relationships, one that can happen in, therapies offices. And it can also be something that surfaces very slowly. It's under the radar, right? But it's really you being pushed to be remade in a financial situation. So what I would watch for is, there can be some shocks and surprises with things being delayed, but I don't think it's being denied. And a lot of that is because you're seeing Venus that's still moving through this house. And for the next 6 weeks, Mars is going to go through your 2nd house. So it's really strengthening and kind of building on your resources, giving you more financial kind of leverage and leeway, and also really knowing your worth. Now, Saturn is obviously your traditional ruler, and it's conjuncting Neptune. So I think a lot of this is your worth being dictated and determined based off of how you communicate to yourself, what you say, how you come across, how you think. And maybe new writing endeavors can be possible here. And then your modern day ruler is Uranus in the 4th house. You will see after the eclipse, the moon will trine that. So there can be some good opportunities for inheritance, family money, you know, lump sums, selling houses, buying houses, refinancing mortgages, things like that. Renegotiating financial kind of relationships, and anything that deals with debt is something that I would recommend during the month of March, just in general. So let's see what we can tell you guys about this particular eclipse. What does Aquarius and Aquarius rising need to know about this eclipse? Can you give them some insight on this 8th house lunation? Wow, you got Judgment as well. So, I mean, it's basically saying it's a definitive turning point. So whatever you've been waiting for, whatever the judgment or decision is going to be, what you're owed, what you're being granted, what the interest rate's going to be, what the balance transfer is going to be, all that stuff is now starting to kind of come up, and it's saying it will happen. It's definitive. So thinking about Mercury here, yeah, I mean, other people's losses or your gains. So you might make money off of a situation where it's dealing with an insurance matter, or it's potentially dealing with an inheritance, or, you know, you're reworking something about how you're budgeting and kind of sharing money with somebody else. But it's about putting more back in your pocket and ensuring that you have what you need. And that renegotiation process might take a little bit of time, but it's almost guaranteed that you're going to see some pretty significant financial change. So you guys will have to let me know what happens with that particular transit. I think it's been a long time coming. Good luck. And obviously my Pisces and my Pisces risings. What's up, guys? You're going to be experiencing a full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo, in your opposite sign, in the 7th house of marriage, relationships, your marketplace, one-on-one connections and relationships. Boy, this is a doozy for you and Virgo, huh? It's like a lot of like topsy-turvy energy. So you're going to see that this is illuminating your house of partnerships, both intimate and professional. And I want you to go back, Pisces. I want you to think about what was happening last fall. You had a solar eclipse in your sign, right? And it was, you had a solar eclipse in Virgo, and it was opposing your sign, where Saturn and Neptune was kind of lingering. So there was a lot of like, do I want this relationship? Do I want to put myself out there again? Do I walk away from something? Is somebody coming back from the past? And a lot of Pisces and Pisces risings have just kind of been like, I want to be left alone. That's what I've heard. So there is a connection to that, some pivotal turning points within yourself, and how that's going to be impacting and affecting the people who you relate to and spend the most time with, right? 7th house. So for you, this is about the other, but you're tied to this because the ruler, Mercury, is retrograde in your sign. So I don't know, because it's gonna vary, and I've seen a lot of it. It's been a lot of like Pisces risings being like, I'm done with this relationship, but there's this other person over here. Do I want to go back? And it's also some single Pisces risings being like, I want to get back into relationships, I want to date, or I want to connect with somebody in the past. So it really depends on your situation. But relationships are under the microscope. And this is a South Node eclipse. So whether it's letting go of a relationship, healing from that, somebody walking away, somebody from the past coming back up, something that's been out of balance is really being shown to you now. And I think it would be shown to you just through the eclipse. But the sheer nature of the Mercury retrograde being in your 1st house as well says that you're really reevaluating and rethinking, do I want to go back there? Is there a way to work on this? Is there something I need to change? Is there a way for us to better communicate or renegotiate? And all of that's a little murky. So I think that it's fair to say for Pisces and Pisces risings, you've been giving too much or accepting too little. It's really up to you to decide. But it could also mean that you have been seeing someone, you know, and now you're starting to see them clearly, and you see them for who they really are rather than who you want them to be. So that Mercury retrograde is a lot of like, I don't know if I want to go into relationship land. And like, yes, when you see South Node eclipses in your 7th house, you'll see partners that are, you know, have their bad hair days. They don't always show up and have all the answers. Sometimes they go through a lot of emotional changes or a lot of physical changes. And it's a lot of you looking at them being like, you know, can I help them? Is this worth holding on to? You know, can we fix this? Can we work together? Or do I need my space? And I think that I would just really focus on this eclipse bringing some kind of a fated turning point in a relationship. It could be an ending for some that creates space for something more authentic within yourself and a new relationship down the road. For other Pisces risings, this could be a more serious commitment and one that feels more aligned with who you actually are. Fated meetings, connections, and reconnections are very likely with this just due to the nature of Mercury retrograde. But I want to remind you guys that you're ruled traditionally by Jupiter. And so I keep thinking about the sun trining Jupiter. I keep thinking about Mercury and Venus coming into a trine with Jupiter. And what you're supposed to be calling in is something that's true love, something that's truly divine, creative, emotionally safe, something that could provide a lot of opportunity for romance and potentially family or children. And you may not be seeing eye to eye if you're a committed Pisces or Pisces risings regarding these things, your kids, your date nights, all that stuff. You can be feeling like partners are moody or they're kind of pulling away. But on the other hand, I think that this is really saying to you, you're supposed to be really choosing joy, choosing the things that bring you the most joy. And if you feel like you're not getting it from relationships, you might be kind of feeling like, okay, I need to kind of redirect myself and figure out if that's not a path, what needs to change within me. Am I willing to go my own way? And you'll see more of this. This will make sense as we're getting into the beginning of 2027 because you'll have some retrogrades in your 7th house. So that'll also be whether or not there is going to be a change going on with relationships even then. So let's take a look. Let's see. I could see a lot of single Pisces risings being like, maybe I am open to reconnecting, or I am putting myself out there again, or I do want to bring in or attract more clients or work with like a partner or even a therapist or get an astrology reading. That would be good while you have that retrograde in your 1st house. Mars on your ascendant too. My goodness. It's like, you're like, I'm ready to travel. I'm ready to get out there. And then Saturn and Neptune conjunct in the 2nd house is definitely touching on the financial stuff, but it's also touching on the fact that you're now starting to learn your worth and your value. And so if you're not feeling chosen, if you're not feeling valued, if you're not feeling respected, some of you guys are going to be more willing to cut ties, even if that means there's going to be some physical or financial challenges as a result of that ending. The card that I get for you guys is the 2 of Swords, which I'm not surprised with Mercury retrograde in your sign. You don't know which end is up yet. You're still trying to figure it out. That's okay. Watch for the changes that happen with relationships. And don't let the way that other people may be indecisive or back and forth with you impact your self-esteem or your self-worth or your stability. Not getting rocked by other people's stuff, I think, is like a big key, because eclipses in the 7th house is other people's stuff. If you can do that, and if you can hold tight until we get Mercury direct and we're getting into like the end of March, maybe even the beginning of April, you're going to be able to make a more clear, concise decision about whether or not you're going to move forward together or on your own. And even if you're single, it's, do I want to move forward on my own, or am I choosing partnerships? But things are about to be revealed to you. And certainly the retrogrades that I think you guys are going to see is that if you are traveling, or if you are prioritizing yourself, or if you are reevaluating your own needs, the right people will fall into place. The right therapists, the right friends, the right potential partners, the right clients, all that stuff. You have to be calling that energy in. So don't let other people kind of take from you under this eclipse. Good luck. Not surprised, Pisces, but I think you need a little bit more time to figure out what you want. That's all. All right, guys. Well, that's the lunar eclipse in Virgo. Obviously, you heard it here, and it's a little bit early for you guys. So we have some time to kind of let this integrate and kind of see how it sets when we get to the 3rd of March when we have the eclipse. I hope you guys liked it and you got something, healthy and productive from this video. Remember, like I said, this is the 3rd knock. So if we have not done some of these things, we're going to get kind of knocked out. We've been preparing for it. We know what needs to go. And I really think the question is, what have we learned? And where am I finally willing to have this release? So trust the process. Pay attention to your body as always. I will be here throughout the process, and I will see you guys on the other side. I'll be back here on Thursday and on Sunday. If this video resonated with you and you found it helpful, please do give me a thumbs up. Consider sharing on socials. You can find me on X at BTVAstro. Also, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and you leave me a comment below because it helps the channel grow. We're seeing a lot of growth in the channel. So for those of you guys who are members and subscribers, thank you guys so much. Drop your rising signs and leave me some comments. Let me know what plays out during this eclipse for you guys. And for all information on me and more, check the links in my description. Until next time, you guys enjoy this lunar eclipse, and I'll see you very soon. Take care.